From cooking for 100,000 people daily at the Golden Temple in India to making the world's biggest torta frita in Argentina, we traveled the globe to uncover the amazing stories behind the world's biggest batches of food. Our first stop is Onam Festival in Kerala, India. This crew of 20 chefs is working against the clock as they prepare 150,000 sadiyas for Kerala's harvest festival, Onam. Every sadiya is made of 20 distinct vegetarian dishes and requires the team to prepare at least a month in advance. It is a huge task, and all the responsibility for delivering it successfully falls on Chef Mahadevan.
എല്ലാവരും ഒരേ രീതിയിലേക്കും ഒരേ മെന്റാലിറ്റിയിലും ഒരേ മൈൻഡിലും പ്രയത്നിക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിന് എപ്പോഴും റിസൾട്ട് ഉണ്ടാവും.
We visited Vinayaka Caterers in Kerala to see how Chef Mahadevan and his team prepare an Onam Sadhya in such big batches. Among the 20 dishes they make, one of their most popular is a dessert called Paella Payasam.
ആ മലയാളി അടുത്ത് നമുക്ക് ചോദിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അറ്റ്ലീസ്റ്റ് ഇവിടെ കേരളത്തിലുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ കുറിച്ച് പറയേ വേണ്ട. ഒരിക്കലെങ്കിലും ഇവിടുന്ന് പായസം കഴിക്കാത്തതായിട്ട് ഒരാളും ഇല്ല. അത്രയ്ക്കും ഒരു വൈഡായിട്ട് പൊക്കോണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു മാസ്റ്റർ പീസ് ഡിഷാണ്.
Making this dish is time intensive and begins with making rice flakes out of a brown rice that is washed, dried, and crushed. Coconut oil and sugar are then added into the rice, and the mixture is placed inside a banana leaf, where it is rolled, tied, and steamed.
സോ അപ്പോൾ എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ആ ഒരു ഇലയുടെ ഒരു ഫ്ലേവർ അതിലേക്ക് വന്നു, നാടനായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഇത് അതിലേക്ക് വരുന്നുണ്ട്.
The resulting rice flakes are pressed in the morning and set aside. Also in the morning, 120 liters of milk are poured into a large pot and boiled.
ഈ പാല് കയറ്റി ആ പാല് തിളച്ച് പാല് വറ്റി കുറുകി ഇങ്ങോട്ടേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ ആ അട അതിലേക്ക് ഇട്ടിട്ട് സമാസമം സെറ്റാക്കുന്നതാണ് ഈ പാലട എന്ന് പറയുന്ന രീതി. ഒരു പാലടയുടെ പ്രോസസ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് 5 തൊട്ട് 6 മണിക്കൂർ വരെയാണ് ഒരു പാലടയുടെ പ്രോസസ്സ് നടക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ആ പാലടയിൽ അത് തന്നെ ആ അത്രയും സമയം നമ്മൾ അത്രയും എഫേർട്ട് എടുത്ത് അതിനു വേണ്ടി നമ്മൾ നിന്ന്.
Another popular dish in the Onam Sadhya is avial, which has traditionally been made with 13 different vegetables. At Vinayaka, avial is made in batches that can feed 500 to 600 people.
അവിയലിന്റെ മോസ്റ്റ് ചാലഞ്ചിങ് പാർട്ട് എന്ന് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇത്രയും സാധനങ്ങൾ അതിലേക്ക് വരികയാണ്. ഇതിൽ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരെണ്ണം കൂടിയാലും കുഴപ്പമാണ്, കുറഞ്ഞാലും കുഴപ്പമാണ്.
Because there are so many vegetables, everything is washed and chopped the day before cooking.
അവിയലിന് ഇവിടെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസ് എന്ന് പറയുകയാണെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചേന, മുരിങ്ങാക്കോല്, പാവയ്ക്ക, അച്ചിങ്ങ, വെള്ളരിക്ക, പടത്തിക്ക. ഇപ്പം 1000 പേരുടെ അവിയൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അതിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് 7 ബക്കറ്റ് ചേന.
In the morning, the vegetables are added inside of the giant pot and cooked on low heat.
അപ്പോൾ തീ കൺട്രോൾ ചെയ്യണതാണ് ഏറ്റവും ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ടാസ്ക്. അത്രയും ശ്രദ്ധാപൂർവം നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ മാത്രമേ നമ്മൾ അതിൽ നിന്ന് കണ്ണും കാതും അതിലേക്ക് ഇരിക്കണം, മനസ്സും മുഴുവനായിട്ട് അർപ്പിച്ച് നമ്മൾ അതിലേക്ക് ഇരിക്കുമ്പോഴേ ആ അവിയലായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. തിരിച്ചത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് ചെറിയ തീയിൽ വെച്ച് ബാക്കിയുള്ള ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസ് മുഴുവൻ അതിലേക്ക് കൊടുക്കണം. ഇത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ തിരിച്ച് നമ്മൾ വെളിച്ചെണ്ണ വെച്ച് ഇത് കൂട്ടി ഇളക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിലും ചെറിയ ഫ്രീ ആയിരിക്കണം.
At this stage, chefs also add coriander, turmeric, salt, raw mango, and sour curd. Then they cover the pot and leave it to steam.
വേവിച്ച് തിരിച്ച് നമ്മളിത് ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ തൈര് നമ്മൾ കൊടുക്കുന്ന ടൈറ്റായിട്ടുള്ള കട്ടിയായിട്ടുള്ള തൈരാണ്. ആ തൈര് ലൂസായി മോരായിട്ടുണ്ടാവും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ കണ്ടൻസേഷൻ തൈര് ലൂസായിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സാഹചര്യമായിരിക്കും. ഈ തൈര് നമ്മൾ മുഴുവനും വറ്റിച്ചെടുക്കണം എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ തീ കൊടുത്തിട്ട്.
Once all of the buttermilk has been drained, the avial is ready for more spices. Cumin paste, green chili paste, and curry leaves are all added and mixed inside.
കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് തേങ്ങ ചതച്ചത് കൊടുക്കും ഈ അവിയലിലേക്ക്. പച്ച തേങ്ങ കഷ്ണങ്ങളും തേങ്ങയായിരിക്കും അതിൻ്റെ മെയിൻ ടെക്സ്ചർ. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇത്രയും സാധനങ്ങളും ഇത്രയും പല വിഭാഗങ്ങളിലുള്ള സാധനങ്ങളെല്ലാം കൂടി ഒന്ന് ചേരുമ്പോൾ അവിയൽ ഒരു സിഗ്നേച്ചർ ഡിഷ് തന്നെയാണ്. കണ്ടമാനം എരിവുണ്ടാവില്ല, കണ്ടമാനം പുളിയും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല, കണ്ടമാനം ഉപ്പും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. എല്ലാം സമാസമം ചേർന്ന് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷാണ്.
But achieving this flavor is easier said than done.
അപ്പോൾ ഈ നമ്മൾ ഈ അവിയൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ആ അവിയലിലേക്ക് കൊടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഓരോ ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസും അതിൻ്റെ പെർഫെക്റ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള റേഷ്യോയിൽ വന്നാൽ മാത്രമേ ഇതെല്ലാം സമാസമം ചേർന്ന് വരൂ.
Another popular dish is sambar, which also requires a day of prepping before anything is cooked. Heaps of lentils are washed, soaked, and then boiled. Once the lentils have cooked, a mix of spices is added to the pots, including tamarind water, coriander, turmeric, asafoetida, green chilies, curry leaves, and jaggery. The sambar is brought to a boil and coconut oil is added along with chopped vegetables.
ഇപ്പോൾ ഞങ്ങൾ ഉപയോഗിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാമ്പാർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ സാമ്പാർ എടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അതിനകത്ത് മുരിങ്ങക്കോലുണ്ടാവും, പാവയ്ക്ക ഉണ്ടാവും, വഴുതനങ്ങ ഉണ്ടാവും, വെണ്ടയ്ക്ക ഉണ്ടാവും.
But the most distinct flavor of the sambar lies in its masala, which is a mix of coriander, black gram, bengal gram, long chilies, curry leaves and asafoetida.
അത് വറക്കോ ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ വെളിച്ചെണ്ണ ഒഴിച്ച് നമ്മൾ വറുത്ത് ഇടിച്ചെടുത്തിട്ട് ആ മസാലയാക്കി നമ്മൾ പേസ്റ്റാക്കി കൊടുക്കുന്നതാണ് വറുത്തരച്ച സാമ്പാർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. സാമ്പാറിൻ്റെ കൂടെ ബെസ്റ്റ് പെയർ നമുക്ക് ചോറിൻ്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, ഒരു ദോശയുടെ കൂടെ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, ഒരു ഇഡ്ഡലിയുടെ കൂടെ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. അത് ഓരോ ആൾക്കാരുടെ പ്രത്യേകതയാണ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓരോ ആൾക്കാരുടെ താല്പര്യങ്ങളാണ്. ഏതൊരു ഐറ്റം എടുത്താലും അതിനോടൊപ്പം കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്ത് പോകാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷാണ് സാമ്പാർ.
Chef Mahadevan's company has been making sarias for 32 years. It began cooking for groups of 50 to 100 people and eventually grew into a daily operation, serving thousands of meals every month.
അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് പെട്ടെന്നൊരു സുപ്രഭാതത്തിൽ 15,000 പേർക്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 10,000 പേർക്ക് തേണിക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ കളിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാലും നമുക്ക് ആ മൈൻഡിൽ ഹാർട്ട് ബീറ്റ് കിടന്ന് ഓടിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കും. ആൾക്കാരുടെ നാക്കിൽ കിട്ടിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ആ ടേസ്റ്റും ആ ഒരു ക്വാളിറ്റിയും കാത്തു സൂക്ഷിക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ വെരി ടഫ് ടാസ്ക്. കാരണം അത്രയധികം ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ട്. ഉണ്ടാക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാധനം അത് അത്രയും പെർഫെക്ഷനായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യണമല്ലോ. കാരണം ഈ ഒരു തൊഴിലെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കണത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എൻ്റെ അച്ഛൻ എന്നോട് പറഞ്ഞു തന്നിരിക്കുന്ന പ്രകാരം ഇതൊരു ദൈവികമായിട്ടുള്ള കലയാണ്. സംഗീതം പോലെ സമുദ്രമായിട്ട് കിടക്കുന്ന ഒരു മേഖലയാണ്. നമ്മൾ ദിവസവും ഇതിനെ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടും നമ്മൾ ദിവസവും ഇതിനെ ട്യൂൺ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടും നമ്മൾ പൊയ്ക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. എൻക്വയറീസ് ഒരുപാട് വരും. ബട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനൊരു പരിധിയുണ്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ലിമിറ്റ് ഉണ്ട്. ആ ലിമിറ്റിൻ്റെ മുകളിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് പോകുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും നമുക്കത് 100% സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല.
Today, Chef Mahadevan employs a crew of 20 people at the height of Onam to meet the demands of his customers.
തൊഴിലാളികൾ എന്നതല്ല, ഞങ്ങളൊരു കുടുംബമായിട്ടാണ് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. അതായത് ഇവിടെ വിനായകയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഇവിടെ ഒരു മുതലാളി തൊഴിലാളി ബന്ധമില്ല. എല്ലാവരും തൊഴിലാളികളാണ്, എല്ലാവരും ഈക്വൽ, എല്ലാവരും ഒരേപോലെ. അതാണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ വിഷയവും.
While feeding this many people is no easy feat, Chef Mahadevan remains humble about the art and craft of his work.
എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് പറഞ്ഞാലും ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ എത്രയൊക്കെ ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാലും ഞാൻ ഒരു സാധാരണക്കാരൻ. എൻ്റെ ഒരു നിയോഗമാണ്, ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ എനിക്കൊരു നിമിത്തമാണ്. ഞാനതിനൊരു നിമിത്തമായി.
When all of the dishes have been cooked, they are packed and brought to a dining hall where they are served as elaborately as they are cooked. Banana leaves are placed on tables and served as plates. At a traditional saria, the banana leaf tips must always face to the left of the eater. Once set, workers scoop the dishes into exact positions from left to right. And papadams, which are like spicy crackers, are added as a final touch.
പ്ലേറ്റുകളിൽ വിളമ്പുമ്പോൾ എല്ലാ വിഭവങ്ങളും വേണ്ട രീതിയിൽ വിളമ്പാൻ സാധിക്കില്ല. വിളമ്പിയാൽ തന്നെ അതെല്ലാം ഒന്നാകാൻ സാധ്യതയുണ്ട്. ഇതാണെങ്കിൽ ഇലകളിലാണെങ്കിൽ സെപ്പറേറ്റ് സ്ഥാനങ്ങളിൽ അത് വിളമ്പുകയും നമുക്ക് ആവശ്യമുള്ളത് അതിൻ്റേതായ ഒരു രുചി ശരിക്കും മനസ്സിലാക്കാനായിട്ട് ഉപയോഗിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യാം.
ദിയയുടെ കീ പോയിന്റ്സ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കീ എലിമെന്റ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ചോറ്, സാമ്പാർ, അവിയൽ, കാളൻ, തോരൻ.
The smallest portions are also served on the left side, and larger portions are closer to the right side.
ചോറ് വിളമ്പിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അവന് സാമ്പാർ നിർബന്ധമാണ്.
സാമ്പാറും കൂടി ഒഴിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു നല്ലൊരു ടേസ്റ്റ് വരും. പപ്പടവും ഈ പരിപ്പും നെയ്യും സാമ്പാറും കൂടി കുഴക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ടേസ്റ്റ് വരുന്നത്.
സാമ്പാറിലെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ എല്ലാ കഷ്ണങ്ങളും വരും, എല്ലാ വെജിറ്റബിൾസും വരും സാമ്പാറിൽ. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഹെൽത്തിന് നല്ലൊരു കറിയാണത്. അവിയലും അതുപോലെ തന്നെയാണ്, ഹെൽത്തിനെ പറ്റി അതിന് പുളിയും എല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്.
അവിയലിൽ എല്ലാ കഷ്ണവും വേണം. അതിനകത്ത് മുരിങ്ങാക്കായാണ് ഏറ്റവും ബെസ്റ്റ് അതിനകത്ത്. ചീമ്പി വേവിക്കുക, അത് ഭയങ്കര സൂപ്പറാണ്.
Onam is a 10-day harvest festival that marks the first month of the Malayalam calendar and commemorates the return of the mythical king Mahabali from the underworld to his home in Kerala. His return is celebrated with floral artwork, traditional dances, boat races, and the Onam Sadhya. Vinayaka's Onam Sadhya costs around $3 per person, and the amount of food you can eat is unlimited. Throughout the meal, servers come around to tables, refilling hot rice in the center of the banana leaf and spooning out more dishes. While many Hindu communities in Kerala opt for a purely vegetarian meal, other Hindu, Christian, and Muslim celebrants, especially those in the northern part of the state, enjoy their Onam feast with prawn curry or beef fry. The meal concludes in the same way it begins, with a variety of sweet payasam puddings and a fragrant digestive pan.
ആ പായസം വരുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പഴം എടുക്കണം. ആ പഴം ഏത് പായസമായാലും വരുമല്ല, പായസത്തിൽ പഴം കുഴയ്ക്കണം.
പാലട അതിനകത്തേക്ക് ഒഴിച്ച് കഴിക്കുമ്പോഴല്ല അതൊരു പ്രത്യേക ഫീലാണ്. ഭയങ്കര സന്തോഷമാണ് അതിന്, അത്രയ്ക്ക് ടേസ്റ്റിയാണ്.
Every day, Uzbek bakers hand-roll and stamp 8,000 loaves of bread. Shaped like wheels, these loaves are dense and chewy, with a golden crust and an airy crumb. Weighing in at 1.5 kilos, they are often eaten in groups and shared around the dinner table. While you can find countless varieties of this bread across Uzbekistan, the most legendary loaves are baked in the city of Samarkand. Here, bread is sacred and made with the utmost care.
Onun endi Samarkandni g'ururida bu nima.
Endi bu hayot mazmunida gapib qo'ygan.
We visited Samarkand to see how these loaves are made and what it takes to bake such big batches. Making these loaves begins by combining 62 kilograms of flour, water, salt, and yeast into a mechanical mixer. After about 40 minutes, the dough is taken out, kneaded, and left to rise for 4 hours. The dough is then cut into 1.5 kilo balls, which are then left to rest and rise for another hour and 20 minutes.
Nonimizni tayyor bo'lishiga 6 soat manday zo'rlar holatga kelishi uchun 5 soat vaqt ketadi. 4 soat xomir davomida achisa, 1 soat 40 minut bu zo'rlar davomida achiydi.
One bowl is 3.5 times the weight of an average American loaf of bread. Once the dough has risen, it is ready to be shaped. This is where master bread maker Davronov Okun comes in. He has been making bread for 8 years and can make 600 loaves a day during his 12-hour shift.
Mana endi bu zo'rlarni o'zimizga moslashtirib olamiz, non ko'rikli sifatli chiqishi uchun va buni qochoqlaymiz. Keyin bu ishqizorimiz bilan bunga ishlov beramiz. ishlovga bo'lganimizdan keyin bunga nampa uzamiz.
Similar to scoring bread before baking, workers use needle-tip mapas to create small punctures in the center of the loaf. When the bread is cooked, steam is able to escape from these holes and prevent the center from rising. But there's more behind these scores than just function. These patterns are also decorative and are used as a way for bakers to add their signature. Once a loaf has been rounded and stamped, sesame seeds are pressed into the center of the bread.
Keyin bu sedanani yopishi uchun qo'limizni oldin suvga, keyin esa sedanaga botirib, nonni yuziga qo'yamiz.
While the bread waits, giant tandoor ovens are heated. Once hot, they're sprayed with water and brought down to a more ideal temperature. Keeping the oven at the right temperature is done entirely by feel, and it is one of the most important parts of the baking process.
Endi buni tandirni qizdirib olganimizdan keyin uni issiq sovug'ini ko'ramiz biz. Issiq bo'lsa tashlaydi, sovuq bo'lsa orqasini bermaydi.
Before the bread is slapped inside the oven, bakers rub a small amount of water on the bottom of the loaf so it can better stick to the walls of the tandoor. Using a cloth to clutch the bread, bakers dive headfirst into the oven, sticking loaf after loaf until every square inch of the oven is filled. But this acrobatic baking doesn't come without risk.
Endi xavfli tushganlar ham bor. Eski ko'hna tandirlarga buzilib kirib ketganlar ham bo'lgan.
While falling into an oven is rare, bakers must be incredibly accurate with their aim and stick. One false move and they could lose a loaf, or worse, they could burn themselves. Each of these ovens can fit around 56 large loaves or up to 72 small ones at a time. Because of the oven's high temperature, these breads only need a few minutes to cook. When the core is crisp and the sides have puffed, the bread is ready to be scooped out. Unlike conventional ovens used in the West, tandoor ovens retain heat for longer periods of time and require less fuel. The use of vertical ovens like these is believed to come from the Semitic peoples who spread across the Middle East and Central Asia. Relics of these ovens have been dated to 5050 BCE.
Ya, endi bizlar mana tandirlar sonimiz ko'p-ku. Agar hammasini stokka oladigan bo'lsam, 15 mingtaga boradi.
Once baked, the breads are loaded onto delivery trucks and driven to the local bazaar. Here, locals can shop for produce and pick up this legendary bread for about $1 to $2, depending on its weight.
Mazasi mashhur qilgan, ta'mi boshqacha. Bizning nonlar mashhur juda, ta'mi ham, mazasi ham zo'r.
Samarqandning noni aziz va lig bo'lgani uchun ham sifatli, ham mazali.
Because of its unmatched taste, legend has it that the air of Samarkand is what gives this bread its unique texture and flavor. Beyond its distinct taste, this bread is also symbolic. Jan loaves are often split in half during wedding ceremonies to symbolize the unity between families, and Uzbek children are often taught to pick up bread from the floor so that a single crumb never goes to waste. Fresh baked bread is typically savored with butter and jam, and after a few days, the firmer loaves are broken into chunky bits for dipping in hot soups and gravy. Luckily, Samarkand's breads have a long shelf life and can last up to 10 days. So if you ever need one sent by mail or plan to travel for an extended period of time, this might be the best bread for you. This is the largest free kitchen in the world. Open 24 hours, year-round, this food hall feeds 100,000 people for free each day. And on religious holidays, that number can double. Just one of these huge bowls is enough to feed around 10,000 people. We visited Amritsar in India to find out everything that goes into feeding such a large crowd and to see just what it takes to make such big batches. This is Harmandir Sahib, often referred to as the Golden Temple. It's the largest Sikh shrine in the world. But despite being part of the holy site, this kitchen doesn't discriminate. The food is completely free to anyone, regardless of religion, gender or ethnicity.
ਸੱਚਖੰਡ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਹਰਿਮੰਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ, ਸ੍ਰੀ ਦਰਬਾਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ, ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ, ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਹੈ। ਜੋ ਵੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਬਾਹਰ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਨ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਲੰਗਰ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਗੁਰੂ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਲੰਗਰ ਜੀ ਵਿਖੇ 24 ਘੰਟੇ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਵਾ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਇਸੇ ਆਸ ਨਾਲ ਇਸੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਨਾਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਮਿਲੇਗੀ। ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਲੰਗਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਛਕ ਕੇ ਮਨ ਨੂੰ ਤ੍ਰਿਪਤ ਕਰਦੀ।
Community kitchens or langar have been popular across South Asia since the birth of Sikhism, and the langar at the Golden Temple has been serving meals since 1577. Each dish is cooked in giant metal vats. Over 100 gas cylinders and huge piles of wood are burned through every day to keep things running 24/7. And there's only one short 30-minute break in the cooking from 4:30 to 5 a.m. Thousands of vegetables have to be peeled and prepared by volunteers before they're taken to be cooked. And while the menu can vary, depending on availability or the donated vegetables that the kitchen may receive, it is always vegetarian. But keeping this many people fed takes a lot of ingredients.
ਦਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਟੋਟਲ ਤਾਂ ਰੋਜ਼ਾਨਾ 15 ਤੋਂ 20 ਕੁਇੰਟਲ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰਾਂ 3 ਤੋਂ 4 ਕੁਇੰਟਲ ਇੱਕ ਕੜਾਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਣਦੀ ਆ। ਉਹਨੂੰ 3 ਤੋਂ 4 ਘੰਟੇ ਬਣਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਗਦੇ।
If you've never heard the term quintal before, it's 100 kilograms. So that's a total of 2,000 kilos or 2 tons of dal per day.
ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਜੀ ਲੰਗਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਜੋ ਦਾਲ ਸਬਜ਼ੀ ਤਿਆਰ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਬੜੀ ਸੁੱਚਤਾ ਨਾਲ ਤਿਆਰ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ। 1 ਕੁਇੰਟਲ ਦਾਲ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਤੇ 4 ਕੁਇੰਟਲ ਪਾਣੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਆ। 25 ਕਿਲੋ ਪਿਆਜ਼, 10 ਕਿਲੋ ਦੇਸੀ ਘਿਓ, 4 ਕਿਲੋ ਮਿਰਚ, 4 ਕਿਲੋ ਮਸਾਲਾ, 4 ਕਿਲੋ ਹਰੀ ਮਿਰਚ, 1.5 ਕਿਲੋ ਹਲਦੀ ਤੇ 5 ਕਿਲੋ ਤੇਲ ਸਰੋਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ।
That's over 375 kilos of onions and 100 kilos of spices every 24 hours just for the dal. To make it, chana dal or split chickpeas and urad dal or black lentils are mixed together and repeatedly washed. They're then moved into even larger vats and mixed with the onions, spices, salt and ghee, a clarified butter, and cooked together. The kitchen spends over $5,000 a day on ghee alone. And it's not just the dal. Each day, the kitchen offers the lentils, a vegetable dish, bread, kheer, rice, pickle, water, and tea. Kheer is a sweet pudding made of rice, milk, sugar, and almonds boiled together. But one of the biggest demands on the kitchen is bread. Unlike the huge vats that can be made in bulk, each chapati needs to be rolled out separately before cooking. Once rolled, each one is hand-coated in ghee to add flavor and keep it from drying out. To keep up with demand, the work is split between machines and people cooking by hand. Producing the bread alone takes 10 tons of flour a day.
ਇਹ ਮਸ਼ੀਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 5 ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਨੇ। 4 ਤੋਂ 5000 ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ 1 ਘੰਟੇ 'ਚ ਕੱਢ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਆ। ਜੋ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਸ਼ੀਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ 7 ਤੋਂ 8000 ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ।
1 ਘੰਟੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ 15 ਤੋਂ 17000 ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੁਲਾਜ਼ਮ ਵੀ ਰੱਖੇ ਨੇ, ਜਨਾਨੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਵਲੰਟੀਅਰ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਲੋਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਚੱਲਦੀਆਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਤੇ 11 ਤੋਂ 12000 ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ 1 ਘੰਟੇ 'ਚ ਪੱਕਦਾ, ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਲੋਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ 6000 ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ 1 ਘੰਟੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ।
And to keep this operation running smoothly, it takes a lot of volunteers.
ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸ ਲੰਗਰ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਪੱਕੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ 300 ਤੋਂ 350 ਮੁਲਾਜ਼ਮ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਲੰਗਰ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੋਜ਼ਾਨਾ ਰੁਟੀਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਨ ਵੀ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ।
This selfless service is an important part of Sikhism. Sevadars, or religious volunteers, are key to keeping this operation running daily. From peeling and chopping vegetables and even donating food to serving and cleaning, almost everything is volunteer run.
ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਰਾਮਦਾਸ ਜੀ ਲੰਗਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਰੋਜ਼ਾਨਾ 1 ਲੱਖ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਸੰਗਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਛਕਦੀ ਆ। ਤੇ ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਥਾਲੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦਾ ਛਕ ਕੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਬਾਹਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੌਜੀਆਂ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ ਇੱਕ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਸੈਪਰੇਟ, ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਵਲੰਟੀਅਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਾਫੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਥਾਲੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਾਫ਼ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾ ਉਹ ਲੰਗਰ ਛਕਾਇਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ।
Using metal trays keeps waste to a minimum, but it makes a lot of noise. The scale of the kitchen has been constantly expanding to accommodate more and more visitors each year. 20 years ago, the kitchen will use 3,500 kilos of flour per day, but now that number has tripled. It now costs over $4 million a year to keep the kitchen running, but with a constant stream of donations and support, the langar has kept up with demand no matter the number of visitors.
ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਸੰਗਤ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਕੁਝ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੀ ਆਵਾਜਾਈ ਇੰਨੀ ਵੱਧ ਗਈ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਲੰਗਰ ਹਾਲ ਦਾ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਿਆ। ਹੁਣ ਲੰਗਰ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ 2 ਹੋਰ ਹਾਲ ਬਣਾਏ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੀ ਵਾਧੀ ਕਰਕੇ, ਔਰ ਅੱਗੋਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੰਗਤ ਦਾ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ।
In less than an hour, everything inside of this tandoor oven will be sold out. These are Samsas, a popular street food in Uzbekistan made of dough, meat, onions and spices. And here at Samarkand in Namangan, Master Chef Kabajan Hofu Ogli Handamov and his team hand roll and cook 3,000 Samsas every weekend.
Samsa biz uchun hozirgi kunda hunarimiz, ishimiz, anaroq hayotimiz bo'lib qolgan.
We visited Samarkand to see how these famous snacks are made in such big batches. Making samsas for the weekend begins at 8 a.m. on Friday. Large bags of strong flour are poured inside a mechanical mixer and combined with oil and water. Markazi uses strong flour because of its high gluten content, which is helpful for holding ingredients inside, but not all flour passes the test.
Shunda unnimizni og'zini ochgandan keyin qo'lda ushaymizda, hech narsaga ishlamagan hali yangi unni qo'lda bitta siqib ko'rib turib aniqlaymiz, bo'ladi bo'lmaydi.
While the dough is being mixed, large chunks of beef and lamb are cut down into strips, then cubed and minced. Over the weekend, Kobojan and his team will cut up to 500 pounds of meat, a process that takes around 15 hours. They also prep eggplants, onions, green peppers, cilantro, tomatoes, and cucumbers. When the dough is ready, workers pull pieces into their hands and roll balls that they then slap on the table and roll flat. These shapes are what they'll use to wrap each samsa. And by the end of the weekend, the team will hand roll about 3,000 of them in various shapes and sizes. While Samarkand makes 20 different varieties of samsas, one of its best-selling items is the deluxe samsa, a colossal meal that weighs close to 2 kilograms.
Salqan bu yarim qozon ovqat bo'ladi. Bir yegan odam ertalab yeb, shu bilan kechqurun choy ichib uxlaydi.
Head Samsa chef Tokir Hadamov starts making the deluxe samsa by adding beef into a large bucket, seasoning it with black and red pepper, salt and cumin, and mixing it with the pre-cut eggplant, onions, green peppers, cilantro, tomatoes and cucumbers. He scoops and weighs 400 grams of the mixture before placing it on top of the dough, which has a quail egg in the center. He tops the mound with meatloaf, beef tongue, and horsemeat sausage, which is locally known as kazi, before wrapping the entire thing into a neat rectangle. One of Markazi's other popular samsas is the koza samsa, which literally translates into bowl samsa.
Hani 5-chi yilga tutdi. Hali bu pasayishi yo'q, o'sdi-o'sdiki, kamaygani yo'q. Hop, buni ichiga tushadigan mana birinchisi bedana tuxum. Hop. Endi buni ichiga tushadi. Yog'siz mol go'sht to'rg'amchi. Buni ichiga tushadigan go'sht 200 gram bo'ladi, mol go'sht o'zi. Yog'siz qora kesak go'sht bo'ladi. Ziravor tushadi, 30 gramga yaqin piyoz tushadi buni ichiga.
They then top the bowl with kazi.
Tayyor bo'ldi masalliqlar. Buning ustini xamir bilan qoplaymiz. Yegan odam sho'rvalari bilan ichida so'lli bo'lib chiqadi. Hech qayerga chiqib ketmaydi.
Markazi is also well known for its samsa with cheese.
Buni ichiga ichiga to'rg'amchi o'sha mol go'sht masalliq tushadi. 100 gram masalliq bo'ladi. Mana bu mol go'shti urib ichiga sir o'ralgan bo'ladi. Langet somsa deydi ko'p yo'q, sir bo'ladi ichida.
Peki aynan shunaqa tuyuladi bu?
Bu mana shu turishida ham mazali, ham ko'rinishi chiroyli, shirin chiqadi. Og'iz ochiq turgani hisobiga boshqa somsalarga qaraganda bu mazaliroq chiqadi.
When all of the samsas have been wrapped, they're placed on long wooden boards, coated with water and sprinkled with white and black sesame seeds, which give them a nutty finish. Workers then carry the boards outside, where Markazi's 9 tandoor ovens have been preheated with wood. Determining when these ovens are ready is done entirely by feel and experience.
Ichidagi cho'g'idan o'zi bilsa bo'ladi. Ko'proq bo'lsa issiqroq bo'ladi, ozroq bo'lsa sovuqroq bo'ladi. Issiqni shunday olamiz.
Unlike the conventional ovens used in the West, tandoor ovens retain heat for longer periods of time and require less fuel.
Tandir ketiga suvuramiz. Ketiga suvurib, sog'ini ko'rishi, ya'ni bir dona somsani olib yopishtirib ko'ramiz-da. Agar kuyib ketadigan bo'lsa, demak, issiq bo'ladi. Kuymagan bo'lsa, normalniy bo'ladi. Holatini shunday aniqlaymiz.
The koza samsa takes about an hour to cook and is the first samsa to go inside of the oven. Bakers rub a small amount of water on each samsa before diving into the oven and sticking them to every square inch of the wall. Each of these ovens can hold around 150 samsas at a time. After about 20 minutes, the tops of the koza samsas start to brown, and the oven is sprayed again with water before it's covered with a giant metal lid. The samsas are then steamed for another 20 minutes, but knowing when they're perfect takes a keen eye.
Samsa o'zi gapirib yuboradi, tandirda turgani gapirib yuboradi. Men tayyor bo'ldim deydi. Haqiqiy ustasi bittada anglaydi.
At 10 a.m., the first batch of samsas is ready to be served. The metal lid is removed from the oven and the samsas are scraped off of the tandoor walls into metal catchers. Cooks slice open the flaky tops of the koza samsas and pour a hot veal tongue broth inside before serving them to customers. Hungry groups who want to pick their own samsas begin queuing an hour before opening, while other guests take a seat and have their samsas delivered to their table. Every samsa is enjoyed with a warm cup of tea, spicy tomato chili sauce, and cucumber tomato salad. The deluxe samsa, which is the largest and most elaborate, costs around $6. And while each samsa has a slightly different filling and shape, the most important parts of a good samsa are the crispy dough, juicy broth, and meat filling.
Samsa shu go'shtda, go'shti yaxshisini olsa shirin bo'laveradi. Uniki ham o'zgacha qovurg'aliginiki bizga o'z holicha yaxshiroq yoqdi. Go'shtlari yumshoq, shirin, mazali pishgan.
Har xil shu otni go'shti, qo'y go'shti, mol go'shti o'zi bir-biriga kirishib, mazasi o'zgacha. Sochniy, eng muhimi sochniyligi.
While it is now widely considered taboo in the US to eat horse meat, that wasn't always the case. Today, horse meat also remains popular in parts of Europe, Canada, and East Asia, including Japan, where it is considered a delicacy. Eating samsas is always a social event, and many people come to samsa restaurants like this multiple times a week.
Bir haftada bir 3-4 kelib turaman. Boshqa samsalardan farqi bor. Xo'p, yaxshi qiladi. Xo'p, muloyim. Ichidagi masalliqlari yaxshi. Shu sababli ko'proq shu yerga kelaman.
The samsa is believed to have been invented in the 10th century, when it was called the sambusak, a Persian word that refers to the triangular shape of the original samsa. Because of its portability, the samsa became a popular snack among merchants on the Silk Road. Through trade, it eventually made its way across the Middle East and into India in the 13th century. Here it evolved into the samosa, where it was no longer baked in ovens but fried in oil. While these differences remain, both countries share an absolute love for the handheld pies.
This is Akshaya Patra, the world's largest free school meal program. This kitchen alone makes enough biryani for 75,000 children daily. Across India, the Foundation's 65 kitchens serve 2 million children every day in over 19,000 schools, and has served over 3 billion meals since its inception in 2000, something which Vice Chairman Sri Chanchalapati Dasa is very proud of.
It's like feeding all of India 3 times.
We visited a mega kitchen to see how they make vegetable biryani and moong dal payasam in such big batches. This mega kitchen is located in Bangalore, the capital of India's southern Karnataka state, and staffs 230 workers across 3 floors. We start on the top floor, where all of the food is cleaned, cut, and prepped. Every day, workers prepare the following day's raw ingredients, and then store the food in a cold room that can hold up to 5 tons of food.
On an average day, we use about 25 ingredients in this kitchen. And one very important aspect in Akshaya Patra is the menu design.
Today's menu includes vegetable biryani, an Indian rice dish that the kitchen prepares with a mix of vegetables and a house blend of spices. Workers begin by running the crates of prepped vegetables through these cutting machines.
So because we are preparing large quantity of food and we have to do it very quickly and we have to do it very cost efficiently, we extensively use a lot of technology.
This batch of biryani contains tomatoes, green peppers, cabbage, carrots, potatoes, and squash.
If you look at these crates, every meal which goes to a child at least has minimum 50 gram of vegetable for a primary school child and 75 gram of vegetables for an upper primary school child.
Alongside the vegetables, workers also portion and prepare rice for this dish. The rice is then washed thoroughly with water before it's cooked. On an average day, the kitchen can handle about 7 tons of grains and 5 tons of dairy. The washed rice and pre-cut vegetables then move through a chute that connects to the second floor. This simple use of gravity is one of the key components of this facility, as it reduces the amount of manual labor and keeps things clean. The ingredients land into 51 of these stainless steel cauldrons, where the cooks use massive stirrers to mix everything together. Workers then close the lids and utilize a 2-ton boiler that generates steam to cook the food.
So biryani takes typically an hour to make, right from pre-processing to finishing it. And the cauldron, which you see here, can feed about 1,000 children.
For food safety and cleanliness, the vegetable biryani is temperature checked and logged. And next to each cauldron, a small stainless steel vessel stores a sample of each batch, which is then tested 24 hours later for microbial growth. Once a week, children receive their lunchtime meal with a sweet treat.
And here, moong dal payasam is being made. Moong dal payasam is a dessert, and children love dessert, being youngsters. So each of these cauldrons can handle about 1,200 liters of dal or lentils.
1,500 pounds of lentils drop down into each of the 6 cauldrons used to cook the dish. Milk and raisins are also added for texture and creaminess. Finally, jaggery syrup, which is an unrefined natural sweetener made from sugarcane, gets stirred into the cauldrons.
Typically, moong dal payasam takes about 1.5 hours to 1 hour 45 minutes, right from boiling the moong dal till the final dessert is made.
Once the vegetable biryani and moong dal payasam are finished cooking, workers transfer the dishes from the cauldrons into these carts, which are then taken to another large chute that connects to the ground floor. The food drops down, then gets portioned and packed into individual vessels for distribution.
These are food grade vessels. Each of the vessels can handle food for about 85 to 100 children. And one of the important cornerstones of Akshaya Patra is hygiene and safety. So you can see each vessel where food is going to be stored is getting washed or cleansed with steam.
Then they're passed down a conveyor belt and get loaded onto Akshaya Patra's custom-built buses called Buses of Hope.
These are insulated vehicles which keep the food warm. Large quantity of food goes in each vehicle. Over a period of time, Akshaya Patra has developed logistics ability. So for example, from this kitchen, we have about 32 vehicles. We handle about close to 650 schools, and we are feeding about 75,000 children every day, though the enrolled strength is about 110,000 children.
And that is just a single kitchen. When you include the 64 other locations across India, they feed over 2 million children daily.
It had a very modest beginning. We started serving 1,500 children in the outskirts of Bangalore city in the year 2000, and gradually we saw there were more and more requests from the headmasters of the schools who would write to us and say, "We see your vehicle carrying food pass in front of our school. Can you please stop and feed our children?" And when we saw these requests, we kept increasing and scaling up our program. And that's how today in Bangalore city, we serve about 200,000 children.
So how does Akshaya Patra get its funds to pay for all of the free food they provide?
So we get a certain amount of support from the government. We top it up with some more money that we raise from individuals and foundation to ensure that the meal we give to the children is hot, nutritious, safe, tasty, so that children are delighted to have a meal at noontime.
Today, they serve 19,000 schools across 14 states and 2 union territories in India. Kitchen staff will create menus based on the students' preferences and feedback by area. For example, Akshaya Patra's kitchens in northern Indian regions can expect foods like roti or flatbreads. In southern India, rice is more widely eaten as a staple food, and the children love the rice-based dishes prepared by the foundation.
నాకు బిసిబెళబాత్ అంటే ఇష్టం ఎందుకంటే చాలా బాగుంటుంది బిసిబెళబాత్ నాకు అమ్మమ్మ చేసినట్టు అనిపిస్తుంది.
Another important aspect of Akshaya Patra is we want to give what otherwise their mothers will give to them if they are at home and the mothers had resources. Of course, no one can replace a mother, but Akshaya Patra tries to come as close to what a mother can cook.
ನನಗೆ ಪಲಾವ್ ತುಂಬ ಇಷ್ಟ. ಬೀನ್ಸು, ಕ್ಯಾರೆಟು, ಆಲೂಗಡ್ಡೆ ಅಜ್ಜಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಟೇಸ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ.
You know, you cannot run a big program of this kind in a mechanical, official manner. All of the personnel involved in the Akshaya Patra program come with a deep commitment of compassion and kindness for children. And so it is that compassion that keeps us very highly motivated day after day to see that we do our tasks and duties with a lot of heart.
Every weekend, Saul Torres and his crew make and sell 500 pounds of lamb barbacoa to nearly 1,200 people.
Y aquí mi trabajo, pues no es tanto un trabajo, es algo que me gusta hacer.
Wrapped inside long maguey leaves and slow roasted for 11 hours, this lamb barbacoa is legendary for its tenderness and its sweet and smoky flavours. We visited Saul at his restaurant, El Pica Uno, in Texcoco, Mexico, to see how this dish is prepared and what it takes to make such big batches.
Hay muchas barbacoas, barbacoa de pollo, barbacoa de res, pero nosotros estamos enfocados en que es la barbacoa de borrego. Texcoco es muy famosa de barbacoa. Es donde, pues prácticamente voy a repetir, donde se encuentran todos los complementos para hacer una buena barbacoa.
Making enough barbecue for the weekend begins at 8 a.m. on Friday. Saul and his team begin preheating the 11 pit ovens by adding large cuts of wood into the bottoms and stripping pieces of cardboard for kindling. Using a lighter, they set the pieces of cardboard on fire and place them into the centre of the wood. When the flames reach the top of the oven, they start offloading fresh maguey leaves and placing them across the ovens. The agave leaves are roasted until they become more flexible. Meanwhile, another team offloads 500 pounds of lamb and places it into the meat prep area. Using a machete, they cut down the larger pieces so the meat can better fit inside of the 3-foot wide oven. All of the ovens El Pica Uno uses are preheated for 7 to 8 hours, but knowing when the oven is ready is based entirely on feel.
Lo que más tiempo lleva aprender es tener el horno a la capacidad que requiere para poder echar un horno. O sea, tenemos que visualizar. No tengo así algo muy concreto para decirte, sabes que este horno ya tiene.
When the oven is ready, the remaining pieces of wood are removed and a smouldering pile is left at the bottom. Workers then take the pre-roasted maguey leaves and line the ovens. These leaves contain a sap, which will infuse the meat with a sweet, smoky flavour when combined with the wood embers.
Trabajamos 36 pencas, 36 hojas de maguey. Aproximadamente son 2 capas y media de. Son 2 capas y además buscamos la fuga para poner una capa para que no se dore la barbacoa, la carne.
Once the oven has been wrapped, a large steel pot filled with chickpeas, guajillo chilies, secret spices and water is lowered into the bottom.
Le ponemos en la parte de abajo ya una olla donde va a caer el jugo de la carne, que es el consomé.
They then place a metal grill on top of that pot to hold the stack of meat inside the oven.
La favorita es el espinazo, el curvo, que lo que es el cuello o la espaldilla. Es lo más suavecito que hay, que es esta pieza, es el cuello. Nosotros trabajamos 11 hornos y un promedio de 40 borregos al fin de semana. En cada horno más o menos aproximadamente 3 borregos caben por horno. 3 borregos más o menos.
When the oven is full, the maguey leaves are folded over the meat and a large metal lid is placed on top and sealed using wet mud and sand.
Para que automáticamente la barbacoa se cose a base de vapor.
The barbecue is left to cook overnight for 11 hours, braising in its own juices and fat. Underneath, the consommé helps steam and infuse the meat with flavour while collecting fat drippings. By morning, the team at El Pica Uno will have a rich consommé to serve alongside the smoky, sweet lamb barbacoa.
Tiene un sabor así como de leña, de humo, por decir. Y le ponemos la penca, la que es la hoja de maguey, y se complementa un sabor inexplicable, muy rico. Tiene que ver mucho en el borrego, seleccionar el animal correcto y darle un buen cocimiento, darle una buena cocción a esa carne, donde quede una textura muy rica.
They start serving the barbacoa at 7:45 a.m. the next day.
A las 8 por muy tardar, ya llega la gente a empezar a consumir la barbacoa, porque llegan cruditos, como lleguen, ya empiezan a consumir su barbacoa.
Using 2 plates, workers dive headfirst into the oven, scooping large pieces of tender lamb into plastic-lined boxes. The meat is sold for about $10 per pound, and customers can choose the cuts they want.
La gente, al cliente le gusta cómo sale directamente del hoyo. La barbacoa ya es tradición. Es un platillo pues prehispánico, por decir. Nosotros estamos manejando todavía el tipo de barbacoa que se maneja hace añísimos. Todavía está con tabique rojo, con lodo, como lo acaban de ver ustedes.
The word barbecue originated with the Taino people of the Caribbean, who used a wooden platform set over a fire to cook their meat. And barbacoa, which directly translates to barbecue, has been cooked in pit ovens in Mexico for more than 500 years.
Yo vengo de una familia que empezó hace 54 años a trabajar la barbacoa, que es mi papá. Y pues imagínate, yo tengo 48 años, prácticamente pues tengo toda una vida con ellos en este bendito negocio. Y lo que ha mantenido al Pica es eso, ¿no? El que ustedes mismos pueden ver cómo sale la barbacoa, qué piezas gustan y adelante poderla consumir en un lugar muy agradable, que ya son las instalaciones que tenemos hoy. Una buena barbacoa tiene que llevar una buena salsa. Con una buena salsa y una buena tortilla, mira, te digo que se me hizo agua la boca de la barbacoa.
Inside El Pica Uno, customers buy the consommé to dip their meats into, and vendors sell other condiments and tortillas to complement the barbecue.
Entonces, cuando tú agarras tu barbacoa, no nomás es de agarrarla y comerla, ¿no? Te encuentras en un lugar tranquilo, hospitalario, con gente noble, con gente sencilla de aquí del negocio. Mucha gente le pone su limoncito, le pone su cebollita, le pone sus especies, por decir. Pero una buena barbacoa no hay más que ponerle salsa y una buena tortilla de comal. Con eso. O sea, a la hora que tú das, te voy a repetir, das la mordida a la barbacoa, al taco, se rompe prácticamente. Y la otra, pues le tira un jaloncito.
Esta barbacoa es especial porque es de hoyo. Me gusta llegar al primer hoyo que abren, el que mi familia vea esta parte de cómo se maneja el tema en provincia para cuando lo abren, el sabor, que tiene mucha diferencia entre lo cotidiano en la ciudad, ¿no? No, gracias porque existe este lugar. La verdad es de que a mí me da tranquilidad, qué bueno que no hay red otra vez, aleja toda esa parte de lo que hoy vive la ciudadanía.
todo, su atmósfera, su gente, su hospitalidad, su comida, especialmente la barbacoa. Y bueno, ya de llegar aquí, ya es como algo mágico, es un lugar mágico.
Even though El Pica Uno usually sells out of its lamb barbacoa every weekend, the restaurant has no plans to cook more than 500 pounds.
Tuvimos una publicidad muy grande y llegó bastante gente, pero desgraciadamente ya no tenemos dónde meter a la gente. O sea, nos saturamos muchísimo. De poder podemos meter mucho más barbacoa, pero ya también vamos a dar un servicio que no podemos llegar a su alcance. Pues no es suerte, no es trabajo, ser constantes, y hasta hoy hemos llegado a tener todo lo que se ha logrado de un gran trabajo.
Sandwiched in a 5-meter wide metal grid, this is Argentina's attempt to fry the world's largest torta frita. But before this dough ever touches the pan, it takes a team of 24 people to prepare the bread and lift it with a crane. All so it can be served to the 20,000 people who came to Mercedes, Argentina to eat the biggest torta frita in the world.
Esta es la mejor torta frita del mundo, es la más rica, es la más grande, es la más buena, es la más todo.
We visited Mercedes to see how this torta frita is made and what it takes to make such big batches. Making this torta frita begins with a dozen individual bags of flour weighing 9 kilograms each. The flour is emptied on a table, and a team of 12 kneaders make individual mounds of flour, forming a crater in the center. Once formed, another volunteer comes around and adds a large ladle of fat into each mound. Kneaders then mix the flour and fat together, gradually adding about a pitcher of water as they mix and knead the dough. But kneading this dough isn't easy. Gabriela is the head kneader of the festival and has been making giant torta fritas since 2009.
Para mí la fiesta de la torta frita es algo muy hermoso porque la vi crecer, la vi nacer, la vi crecer con mucho esfuerzo, con mucho sacrificio. A nosotros nos insume mucho sacrificio. Y un poquito de experiencia tenés que tener porque si no sabés amasar, no podés empezar amasando 9 kilos. En la actualidad, todas las que amasan esta torta son amasadoras o participantes o ex participantes o gente que habitualmente en su casa amasa. Todas las amasadoras son de Mercedes.
Son 12 amasadoras que se reúnen en torno a esta gran mesa de 6 metros por 6 metros. Se hacen 12 amasijos individuales que luego se van uniendo de a 2, de a 4, hasta que queda un único amasijo en el centro.
While the dough is being formed, another group of volunteers lights a wood fire underneath the 5-meter pan that will cook the torta frita. The pan itself is full of 1,600 kilograms of grease, which festival organizers have collected over the course of 3 months.
La grasa también la hacemos nosotros, así que es mucho trabajo y bueno.
After the dough has been combined into a single massive ball, it's covered with a cloth and left to rise for 15 minutes. The next step is the most difficult part of the process: flattening and shaping the dough. Working together, bakers walk around the dough in covered shoes, using their feet and body weight to push the edges of the dough out until it starts to resemble a giant disc.
Y la parte más difícil es ahora sí el estiramiento, ¿viste? Porque se empieza a complicar, se pone la masa dura, el tiempo, a veces se reseca mucho y bueno, pero de a poco se puede.
Hay que pisar con ese fierro que está ahí y empezar a amasar.
Working together, the team of bakers uses a 6-meter wide rolling pin to get the dough as flat as possible. Standing in the center of the roller, 2 workers use their feet to help apply even pressure across the pin. Going section by section, the bakers then rock and roll the pin to gradually flatten the dough.
Se está estirando la masa y hay que hacerlo de los diferentes lugares para los 4 puntos cardinales. y una vez que está toda estirada se la enrolla en el palote y se coloca en una gran rejilla.
En estos momentos acaban de girar la masa, realmente hoy hay mucha humedad, entonces les ha dado mucho trabajo poder estirar la masa.
While the bakers try their best to roll the dough into a single flat sheet, it's easier said than done. Parts of the dough rip and need to be patched.
Bueno, estoy acomodando los bordes porque los bordes tienen que quedar bien acomodaditos, no salirse afuera para que pueda entrar dentro del sartén. Entonces le doblamos todos los bordecitos para que queden bien acomodaditos. Ahora le vamos a colocar la otra reja arriba y se va a atar con alambre bien firme para poderla después llevar al sartén gigante.
Ahora ya están las dos rejillas, se está asegurando, atando con alambre una rejilla con la otra, para después sí ya poder llevarla al sartén caliente, que ya nos está esperando.
The metal grid weighs close to 1,000 kilograms and helps sandwich the torta frita so it can be lifted by the crane.
Todo eso hay que levantarlo, hay que elevarlo con una grúa, hay que colocarlo dentro de 1.700 litros de grasa.
But it could all go wrong if the grid isn't tight enough. It takes about 10 minutes to fry the first side. And after all of that, they have to take it out again, spin it, and cook the other side.
Generalmente cuando la damos vuelta por segunda vez y la colgamos, alguna lágrima cae de emoción.
La cocción en sí mismo es algo muy rápido, son 15 minutos aproximadamente, entre 15 y 20 minutos, 10 minutos por lado pongamos. Pero todo el proceso nos lleva 2 horas a 2 horas y media. Una vez que está cocinada de ambos lados, ya está lista para comer. Y la torta termina pesando entre 150 y 160 kilos una vez que deja la grasa del sartén. Ese es el peso final que tiene la torta.
When the bread is done, workers peel off large sections and hand them out to the hungry crowd.
Buenísima, la mejor.
Y la torta frita tiene que ver con nosotros, tiene que ver con nuestras costumbres, tiene que ver con nuestras tradiciones, tiene que ver con el encuentro que es tan propio de esta zona de la provincia de Buenos Aires y por eso se eligió para festejarlo.
In Argentina, torta frita is a popular street food that's often enjoyed with a warm cup of yerba mate.
Mate y torta frita es Argentina.
The Fried Cake Festival began in 1999 as a way to honor and remember veterans who served in the Falklands War. And in 2009, festival organizers decided to make the world's largest torta frita. Over the years, Uruguay and Argentina have passed that record back and forth. And while this annual tradition was paused at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Mercedes' Torta Frita returned in 2022 to reclaim the world title.
Es la primera vez que venimos a esta fiesta de la torta frita. Nos dijeron que era la fiesta de la torta frita y que hacían la más grande, nada más. Y bueno, después al venir ahora, bueno, comprobamos que es así, que es la más grande. Y bueno, estamos acá probando y la verdad que es muy rica. A mí me gustó mucho, es sequita y no cae tan pesada.
Bien sabrosa, muy linda, muy sabrosa.
Weighing 350 kilograms, this is one of the largest rice pilafs in the world. Locally known as Plov, it is the national dish of Uzbekistan. It is enjoyed year-round as a weekday meal and prepared on huge scales for weddings and holidays. Its popularity and ubiquity across Uzbekistan cannot be overstated. It is so beloved that nearly 3,000 people come to Beshkazan Pilaf Center in Tashkent to have it for lunch every day.
Oshda ham odamga me'dasiga tegmaydigan taom bo'lgani uchun ham
we visited Beshkazan to see what it takes to make such big batches. Making plov on this scale begins the night before. Workers start by peeling and cutting 100 kilograms of carrots and placing them into large buckets. In the morning, Master Chef Mirko Mil, who has been making this dish for 20 years, starts cutting 100 kilograms of mutton and beef.
Oshpazlik ishi, endi hamma ishni o'ziga yarasha mashaqqati bor, men uchun, lekin men o'zim shu narsaga qiziqqanim uchun unaqa qiyin bo'lmasa kerak deb o'ylayman.
He then ties the chunks of meat together. Tying the meat helps ensure it stays tender during the cooking process and prevents it from splaying. Just preparing these ingredients takes 3 hours. While the meat is being prepared, a large cast iron cauldron called a kazan is preheated and filled with 40 liters of sunflower oil. In Uzbekistan, it's said that the best tasting pilavs are the oiliest. Once warm, those chunks of beef and mutton are slid into the center of the kazan and cooked until golden brown. When the beef has browned, chefs work together to lift and dump 100 kilograms of cut carrots into the center, along with onions. This blend of carrots and onions is known as zirvak and is the general base for all plov. This base is similar to sofrito in Italy and mirepoix in France. Plov recipes used to include spinach, chestnuts, beans, and dried fruits, but most of these ingredients have been substituted. At Beshkazan, soft raisins, garbanzo beans, dried barberries, and water are added. After about 30 minutes, 100 kilograms of a local long-grain laser rice is added and covered by large metal plates, which help steam the rice. Unlike many Middle Eastern pilavs that fry the rice, the steamed rice in plov is crumbly, soft, and airy. But achieving this texture and making sure the rice doesn't stick together is difficult.
Eng qiyin joylar shu suv bilan shu olovni yoqish deb bilsam kerak shu oshni. Guruchimiz qancha suv yeydi, olovni qanaqada yoqish kerak, tegiga olib ketmaydimi? Shu narsa deb o'ylayman men.
When the rice is done, the steaming plates are removed and the rice is fluffed into the mix. The entire cooking process takes around 6 hours and is a labor of love.
Taom odamlarga bir yaxshi osh qilib, bir odamlarga osh yedirib, oshing shirin bo'libdi yo'qsa shuni o'zi bizga bir naqa xursandchilik, qiziqish.
Once mixed, generous portions of plov are loaded onto plates. In Uzbekistan, there are over 120 recipes for plov that use some combination of meat, vegetables, salad, and raisins. Plov in Uzbekistan is typically served with a fresh tomato and crispy onion salad, but there are plenty of other condiments and toppings you can add.
Oshni endi bezashu har xil bedana tuxum, qazi, qartala, bexila qo'yib yesangiz, qo'shib yesangiz bo'ladi.
And everyone has their own part they enjoy the most.
Oshni eng yeyishli qismi paylari, ilili suyalini solib beradi.
O'sha sabzili, chiroyli, go'shtlarni ham titilib turadigan osh eng yaxshi osh hisoblanadi-da. Umuman hamma osh o'zi zo'r osh. O'zbeklarimiz juda ham yaxshi shirin tayyorlashadi.
Each plate costs around $1 to $2. And while plov is now a relatively cheap and ubiquitous meal in Uzbekistan, it wasn't always this way. Up until the 1930s, plov was mostly eaten by wealthy families and reserved for special occasions like holidays and weddings for everyone else. Today, many Uzbeks eat plov 3 to 4 times a week and sometimes skip the meat altogether.
Yeyman haftasiga 1 martami, 2 martami. Biz endi shuni ichida bo'lganimizga uncha osh anaqa qilmaymiz.
Plov is adopted from the Farsi word polo and akin to the Turkish word pilaf. The first known recipe of plov is believed to come from 13th century Persia, where it was adapted from a barley dish that used similar ingredients. Legend has it that Alexander the Great was fed plov after he conquered modern-day Samarkand. He apparently loved the dish so much that he brought the recipe back to Macedonia. By the 15th century, several styles of pilaf had established themselves in Central Asia, India, Turkey, and the Caribbean, where they remain a staple. While it's now a more common meal, plov is still the preferred dish for Uzbek weddings. During weddings, guests generally help prepare the meal for everyone on a similar scale to biesh kazan. Kwazans on much smaller scales were first introduced by Turkish nomads and are now just as common in Central Asia as a frying pan is in the West. While household kwazans aren't as large, they can typically feed 12 to 15 people, and many families have at least one larger kwazan to feed large groups of guests. Despite countless varieties of plov, Besh Kozan Pilaf Center in Tashkent draws a faithful crowd.
Tez kelib turamiz. Toshkentga har safar keladigan bo'lsak, doimiy keladigan bo'lsak, doimiy shu 5 qozonning oshini yegani kelamiz. Shu ochilgandan beri shu joyi biz ashaddiy klientimiz desak ham bo'laveradi.
Whether you call it plov, pilaf or pilau, the core ingredients of this time-honored dish revolve around rice. And the one served at biesh kozan is the ultimate sign of the good life in Uzbekistan. Every day, a team of chefs spend nearly 12 hours stirring milk and sugar to make over 700 kilograms of halwa for the famous sweet shop Chanji Halwa. The sweet and soft milk-based dessert may be time-consuming to make, but people travel from all over to get it from Ji Halwa.
450 किलोमीटर गाड़ी चला के मैं यहाँ पाली हलवा लेने के लिए आया हूँ बीकानेर से.
While you can find countless types of halwa all across India and throughout the world, this shop has continuously been praised for its dedication to the craft and quality of ingredients. We visited the shop to see why it is so famous and how it prepares Gulab halwa in such big batches. Chanji Halwa prepares 3 batches of halwa every day at its production workshop in Pali, Rajasthan, India. This process begins at 5 a.m. by fueling the furnace with the coal that piles high up on the walls.
क्वांटिटी तो यही है, महीने में एक गाड़ी लगभग चलता है कोयला. ये लगभग आता है 17-18 टन आता है.
The coal comes from mines in Jharkhand, and Chansingh Rajpurohit, owner of Chanjiwala, believes it gives the dish a distinctive flavor.
वैसे तो गैस पे भी बनाओ, किसी पे भी बना दो, कोयले की जगह जो टेस्ट आता है वो एक अलग ही आता है.
Workers use mallets to break each brick of coal into smaller pieces.
ये कोयला ही तोड़ते हैं दिन भर. कोयला तोड़ के वापस डब्बे भर के भट्टी के पास में लेके जाते हैं यहाँ से. गाड़ी भी आई है दूध की अभी. ये 22 कैन आई है. 880 लीटर दूध आया अभी.
The dominant ingredient in halwa is milk, which the shop sources from nearby villages. To get the creamy taste and texture, only full-fat milk is used. The milk is then strained into kadays, which are deep pots similar to woks but with steeper sides.
मेरी यहाँ पर 12 कढ़ाई इधर है, 10 कढ़ाई सामने गोदाम में है. दिन भर चलती रहती है. सुबह 5 बजे से शाम को 7 बजे तक चलता रहेगा.
The whole cooking process takes about 4 hours and a full staff. 4 workers are dedicated solely to the coals, while 10 to 12 chefs work on the furnaces. They use ladles to continuously stir the milk for 2 to 3 hours until it becomes thick and creamy. While the stirring movement may seem simple enough, it actually takes a seasoned chef to get it right.
देखो खुरपा तो इसमें क्या है कि एक जैसा चलाना पड़ता है, जो बीच में जगह नहीं रहनी चाहिए, दोनों एक हाथ में जो खुरपा एक सरीका चलाना पड़ता है। खुरपे बरोबर नहीं चला हुआ तो नीचे जल जाता है और जल जाने के बाद में वो काम नहीं आता है। इसके लिए उसको ट्रेनिंग देनी पड़ती है, 15-20 दिन की ट्रेनिंग करते, फिर उसको खुरपा चलाने के लिए भट्टी पे खड़े करते हैं।
Once the milk reaches the right consistency, sugar is added.
हमारी जो शक्कर आती है वो महाराष्ट्र से आती है। महाराष्ट्र की शक्कर बढ़िया आती है एकदम, थोड़ी मिट्टी भी कम रहती है और अच्छी क्वालिटी की होती है।
And the stirring doesn't stop there. The chefs will continue to stir the milk and sugar mixture for another 1 to 2 hours.
और फिर उसको 100 टेम्परेचर से 10 डिग्री टेम्परेचर किया जाता है, नीचे वो डाला जाता है लोखंड का वो।
Eventually, the contents of 10 kadays are combined into 4 to continue cooking slowly. When the thickened milk turns red and grainy and clarified butter starts to appear on the surface, the halwa is finished cooking.
सिकाई का पूरी हो जाती है, फिर उसको नीचे बड़ी कढ़ाई में डालते हैं।
Workers scoop 8 kilograms of halwa into these individual round serving plates and pick out any burnt bits with tongs.
वापिस उस साइड से बना के इस साइड में लाके इसको ठंडा करते हैं थोड़ा।
As the final touch, each dish of halwa is carefully decorated with work.
बरक एक चांदी का पेपर होता है, ये मिठाई पे सजाया जाता है, इससे क्या इसकी सुंदरता बढ़ती है। और फिर सिल्वर फॉल लगा के फिर वो जाता है अपने कोई के नहीं दुकान पे, और दुकान पे जाके वो सेल कर देते हैं।
When Chin Sing started the shop in 2007, he sold about 20 to 30 kilograms of halwa a day. But now,
यहाँ से लगभग 700 किलो 700-800 किलो के लगभग जाता है दिल्ली दुकान। यहाँ से दिल्ली का 700 किलो लगभग है, तो महीने में 21-22 हज़ार किलो बनता है।
the shop, which is very well known for its small, old table setup out front, sees about 500 to 600 customers every day.
और फिर ग्राहक की भीड़ आनी चालू हो जाती है, फिर वो ये दिन भर ऐसा ही क्रम चलता रहता है।
Once they're at the table, customers can choose how much they want to purchase.
दुकान खोलने के बाद में पहले तो वो एक टेबल है, टेबल के ऊपर कांच का काउंटर लगाते हैं। काउंटर लगा के बाद में उसमें एक थाल रखते हैं। पैकिंग तो अंदर होती है, बाहर वो जो 100 ग्राम 50-200 ग्राम पाव के जो आते हैं उसको वहाँ बाहर से ही दिया जाता है, और अंदर की जो पैकिंग होती है।
मैंने आधा किलो हलवा लिया है, ये बच्चों को बहुत पसंद है, तो मैं 2-3 दिन में इनके यहाँ आता रहता हूँ और ये मैं ले जाता हूँ बच्चों के लिए। तो और कहीं का बच्चों को स्वादिष्ट लगता ही नहीं है, इनके यहाँ का ही स्वादिष्ट लगता है ये हलवा।
जी मैं छोटा था जब से आ रहा हूँ, मेरे पापा के साथ आता था पहले। जी हलवे का टेस्ट बहुत बढ़िया है, आप भी ट्राई करके देखें। बहुत अच्छा हलवा है यहाँ का पाली का, और ये यहाँ से दूर दूर से भी लोग आते हैं लेने के लिए, बाहर से जो आते हैं टूरिज़्म वो भी लेके जाते हैं यहाँ से हलवा। बहुत मशहूर हलवा है
पाली में। इस हलवे की लगभग 35-40 साल हो गए। पहले तो ट्रेनें थी नहीं, तो फिर बहुत कम ही बनता था। जब से फिर ये थोड़ी बहुत ट्रेनें चालू हुई तो फिर धीरे धीरे राजस्थान, गुजरात, महाराष्ट्र और अब धीरे धीरे ऑल इंडिया और वर्ल्ड में ये हलवा प्रसिद्ध है।
Halwa is believed to have originated in Arabia around the 13th century, but has since become an ubiquitous dessert throughout India. The recipe varies from region to region, but some other common alternative ingredients include semolina, carrots, almonds and dates. But it seems like Chanji's version of the dessert has won the hearts of all sweet lovers.
महीने में मतलब नॉर्मली ऐसे खाने के लिए तो 2-3 बार आ जाता हूँ। ये हलवा सिर्फ पसंद है कभी प्योर दूध और शुगर से बनता है। कोई भी इसमें मतलब कलर्स वगैरह या कुछ और कुछ ऐड नहीं करते इसमें, इसीलिए।
हम ऐसे तो समझ लो 20-25 किलोमीटर से यहाँ से आए हैं, लेकिन कभी कभी हम 100-150 किलोमीटर बालोतरा से भी यहाँ लेने के लिए आते हैं।
पाली का बेस्ट हलवा है चैंजी हलवा।
पाली में बात ये है कि जो पाली का जो प्रसिद्ध हलवा है चैंजी हलवा, ये सबसे ज़्यादा पसंद करते हैं यहाँ। ना बनाते बिक जाता है, ताज़ा ताज़ा बेचो, ताज़ा ताज़ा खाओ, और इसमें मज़ा एक अलग ही है।
Over 160 kilograms of meat, vegetables and rice go into this massive pan to make one of the biggest paellas in Spain. But this paella is just half of what Vicente Martinez and his team are making for Quesa, Valencia's festival of the reserve. At the end of the day, these paellas will feed more than 1,000 people, all for free. But the size of this paella isn't the only thing that's special. It also has a unique ingredient that makes this paella distinctly Valencian. So what does it take to make paella in such big batches?
Pues llevo más de 30 años en la empresa a cocinar paellas gigantes por todo el mundo. Soy Vicente Martínez y estamos cocinando aquí unas paellas de 1.400 raciones para las fiestas populares del pueblo de Quesa.
This is known as the Festival of the Reserve. On the morning of the festival, Vicente and his crew offload and wheel two 2.35-meter paella pans into the town square. When the pans are secure, they get to cooking.
Lo primero que pongo en la paella es el aceite y luego se nivela y ya luego se prende fuego y la carne para sofreírla.
Each paella is cooked with 8.5 liters of olive oil, 75 kilos of chicken, and 30 kilos of rabbit.
Pues estamos sofriendo la carne para dorarla bien doradita, como verás esa ya está. Se sofríe en el centro y luego vamos cambiándola, así se sofríe toda la carne perfecta.
When the meat is done, 40 kilos of frozen green beans, butter beans and white beans are added into the mix, along with 5 kilos of snails.
Los ingredientes que se utilizan son los típicos de Valencia, de la huerta de Valencia. El pollo, el conejo y las verduras son típicas de Valencia. En cada zona se guisa de una manera, pero la base siempre es el pollo, el conejo y las verduras, lo que es la judía verde y el garrofón.
Once everything is mixed together, 135 liters of water are added into the pan.
Lo que te lleva un poco loco, si tú quieres, es el agua. La cantidad de agua es lo que te puede llevar un poco más loco, porque como trabajamos con leña, la leña, dependiendo de si está más seca, más húmeda, si quema más rápido o menos rápido.
After the water has been added, 60 kilos of a local medium-grained rice called arroz redondo is tossed into the mix. Cooking with wood means that the water and fire need to be constantly monitored so that the rice doesn't burn.
Es un plato bastante difícil de cocinar para la gente que no lo ha hecho nunca, sobre todo porque se hace a leña. De hecho, verás que muchos chefs rehuyen de cocinar arroz.
In Spain, bomba, albufera and redondo rice are commonly used because they can absorb more liquid and flavor than regular rice without getting mushy.
Pues la paella, como se dice ahora, es una explosión de sabores, carnes, de verduras, el arroz absorbe esos sabores y es una delicia.
Paella pans often come in several diameters, but the general shape is always wide, shallow and round with sloping edges. This shape is important because it helps the rice cook evenly in a single layer.
Cada vez el arroz está más reposado y mejor, Todos queremos ser los primeros, pero cuando mejor está la paella es al final.
And many Spaniards agree.
Carraos es esa parte de arroz que se pega un poquito entre la paella y el arroz que está así. Y eso lo rascas un poquito y queda de muerte con el resto de arroz.
While everyone enjoys paella, the exact ingredients for what constitutes a true paella is still hotly debated.
A ver, hay arroces y paellas. Paella es la valenciana, punto.
While the festival is full of joy and celebration today, the origins of its birth are much darker. In 1690, Kesa experienced a devastating outbreak of the bubonic plague, which left only a few members of a single family alive. Resilient, the surviving family gave shelter and food to anyone who moved back to Kesa.
Para conmemorar ese hecho de que la gente volvió a nuestro pueblo y Kesa volvió a nacer, pues símbolo de nuestra hospitalidad como pueblo, pues hacemos 2 paellas gigantes y entregamos el panecillo para repartir a todo el mundo que quiera venir a visitarnos.
Paella is thought to have come from farm workers in Valencia, who used shallow pans to cook rice over wood fires and added in ingredients they could forage or hunt to create a cheap but filling one-dish lunch. Over time, the elites of Spain started to enjoy paella for weekday lunches, and it became more popular across the country. And while paella is now recognized as a traditionally Spanish dish, it wouldn't be what it is today without the introduction of rice by the Moors in the 12th century. Since then, paella has taken on many iterations across Spain, but the classic ingredients of rice, rabbit, snails, and beans remain integral for making a Valencian paella.
Es un lujazo tener a estas personas que nos hacen unas paellas increíbles, de buenas y de sabrosas y abundantes, de todo.
Pues para mí la paella significa el mejor plato que se puede comer una persona. Yo llevo más de 30 años y no me he cansado de comer paella.
Mi parte preferida de este evento es que te puedes juntar con todos los colegas, con los padres y disfrutar de una buena comida junto a todos ellos.
Siempre te falta algo para decir esta paella es de 10. Puedes decir es de 9, es de 9 y medio. Nunca puedes decir que es la paella de 10.
This is the Shantivan complex, a mega kitchen in Mount Abu, Rajasthan, belonging to the spiritual organization Brahma Kumaris. The kitchen is run entirely by volunteers who cook enough food to feed 40,000 people a day. The operation spans 4 floors and includes 14 dining halls, which can seat 15,000 people at a time. We visited the complex during a special celebration called Baba Milan to see how it prepares these meals in such big batches. Work in the kitchen begins at 5:30 a.m. with hundreds of volunteers cutting vegetables and peeling steamed potatoes by hand. During Baba Milan, 2,500 volunteers need to help prep and cook the festival meals. But that isn't something Banu Prakash, who's head of the bread department, is worried about.
तो कितनी भी सेवा होती है तो हम देखते हैं कि समय पे सेवा के जो सहयोगी है वो भी मिल जाते हैं.
The cut vegetables are loaded onto crates and wheeled into the main kitchen, where they're washed again in large metal containers and strained. All of the vegetables the kitchen uses are seasonal and bought directly from farms. And the food is prepared following the Sattvic diet, or the Yogi diet, which is rooted in Ayurvedic practices. Today the chefs are cooking rajma, vegetable sabzi, chapatis, and teplas. While most of the prep work is done by hand, some vegetables are processed using machines. Crates of tomatoes are pureed and spinach is chopped finely. On the other side of the kitchen, another team uses that tomato puree to make a sauce. They pour 5 liters of peanut oil into a giant pot. Then they mix in whole wheat flour, curry powder, handfuls of cumin seeds, asafoetida, bay leaves, and chili powder. Buckets of pureed tomatoes are poured inside and tossed together with garam masala, a common Indian spice mixture. The chefs then scoop the sauce out with buckets and place it into large metal containers so that it can be delivered to another section of the kitchen. The tomato sauce is rolled to Chef Nilesh Bahi, who has been working here for 17 years and is in charge of making rajma, a curry dish made with kidney beans.
है ना, वैसे मैं राजस्थानी हूँ लेकिन यहाँ आकर ही मैं इतना राजमा जो बनता है यहीं सीखा और मैं बनाता भी हूँ अभी, मेरा फेवरेट है, तो काश मैं राजमा बहुत दिल से बनाता हूँ.
He soaks the kidney beans for 10 to 12 hours before boiling them in this pot for 3 hours. Once they're cooked, Nilesh uses a small scooper to examine the beans' tenderness and gauge the broth consistency. When the beans pass the test, he tips the pot and scoops in 400 kilograms of the tomato sauce. He then fills the pot with more water so it achieves the same consistency he had before the tomatoes. This is something Nilesh determines with his eye. On the side, he mixes oil, cumin, coriander, garam masala, asafoetida, gram flour and chili powder into a bucket. He then pours this into the pot and adds salt. After he adds the first round of spices, he tastes the rajma and decides if it needs more flavor. Once Dinesh approves of the taste, he mixes in finely chopped spinach.
और जो आप देखेंगे बर्तन, जो आप उसका कैपेसिटी 1200 लीटर का है, उस बर्तन में हम लोग जब पूरा भर के बर्तन बनाते हैं, उसमें 7000 लोगों का दाल या राजमा बन जाता है पूरा.
Cooking all of this food requires an immense amount of energy. Since 1990, the kitchen has used a concentrated solar array on top of its roof to heat water and generate steam, which can be used to cook most of the food the kitchen makes. The cooked rajma is drained through a spigot into smaller containers, which are then covered and wheeled to the dining halls. One of the most important dishes made in the kitchen is sabzi, a mixed vegetable dish that varies depending on the vegetables available that day. Cooks heat oil in a massive pot along with cumin seeds, curry leaves, and asafoetida. Next, they add turmeric, cut chilies, and chopped bottle gourd. They mix everything together before adding in chopped potatoes, garlic gourd, and cauliflower. Then they add water and season the mix with salt and chili powder. Next come green beans, a pot full of tomato sauce, peas, cut green bell peppers, and shredded carrots. It's finished off with a generous amount of salt. Like every other dish this kitchen serves, the vegetables are taste tested and seasoned accordingly during the cooking process. Once the chef at hand gives the flavor a thumbs up, the mixture is cooked back into the metal pots and wheeled to the dining halls. Bread is essential to every meal. The bread department at the Shantivan complex can make up to 26,000 flatbreads every hour. To do so, bakers first pour 50 kilogram bags of flour into mechanical sifters to remove large clumps of flour.
वैसे 200 केजी आटा हमको 10 मिनट में ये मशीनें गूंद के देती है.
The sifted flour is then taken to mechanical mixers where different types of dough are made. Today, the bread department is making two types of flatbreads, chapatis and teplas. The tepla dough is made by combining water, whole wheat flour, turmeric, chili powder, ground spinach, and fenugreek seed. Once mixed, the dough is wheeled to volunteers who use their hands to roll it into palm-sized balls. These balls are then brought to a team of 200 rollers who flatten them so they can be cooked. chefs rub the flattened teplas with ghee and slap them onto flat griddles to cook. Together, this team can make 20,000 teplas an hour. On the other side of the bread department, machines are used to make chapatis without fillings. The dough is top-loaded into machines, which chop, flatten and bake it into crispy chapatis.
ये एक मशीन एक घंटे में 2000 चपाती अपने को बना के देती है। ऐसी 7 मशीनें अपने पास है, तो 14000 चपाती एक घंटे में मशीन से बनाई जाती है।
Like everything else that gets cooked here, the breads are placed inside metal containers to keep warm and wheeled to the dining halls for guests. In the dining halls, the rajma is served with rice, chapatis and bhindi masala, a side dish made of okra and spices. During Baba Milan, the Hindu god Shiva, who is recognized as the father of souls, is believed to visit practitioners.
तो बाबा मिलन का मतलब शिव बाबा हमारे यहाँ पे एक साकार मीडियम के अंदर साकार शरीर में आते थे।
सब बाबा के बच्चे, बाबा का भंडारा है, वो भरपूर रहता है, कभी खाली नहीं रहता, सबके लिए फ्री।
Many of the devotees have been coming here for years.
17 वर्षों से हम परमात्मा के साथ मिलन मना रहे हैं। हमें बहुत अच्छा यहाँ फील होता है। जिस सुख शांति के लिए लोग बाहर जाते हैं वो हमें यहाँ प्राप्त होता है। सिर्फ हम नहीं, यहाँ पर हजारों भाई बहन आकर लाभ लेते हैं।
उसके पीछे के भाव है कि यहाँ हर एक व्यक्ति जो आ रहा है वो अपने जीवन को श्रेष्ठ करने के लिए आ रहा है, मन की शांति के लिए आ रहा है।
Imbuing the food with positive intention is one of the biggest responsibilities during the cooking process.
तो जैसे हम सोचते हैं तो हमारी सोच से हमारी वृत्ति बनती है, और जैसे हमारी वृत्ति होती है वैसे वाइब्रेशंस बनते हैं। भोजन में वो वाइब्रेशंस बढ़ते हैं तो खाने वालों के ऊपर भी उसका इफेक्ट बनता है। ये जो भाव और भावना है यही इस भोजन को स्पेशल बनाते हैं। नहीं, भोजन बनता है तो यहाँ देखा जाता है कि ये जो भोजन हम बनाते हैं तो हमारा ये लक्ष्य रहता है कि ये भोजन खा के सब खुश हो जाए और हमको दुआएं दे।
Every weekend, Samgori Farms in Damyang County, South Korea, cooks 1,700 pounds of chicken and vegetables inside of their 40 wood-fueled woks. The final result? Dakbokkeumtang, a spicy chicken stew full of potatoes, onions and carrots, and a secret chili sauce.
사실 힘든데 재밌는 부분이라고 하면 손님들이 맛있게 드실 때 제일
We visited chef Kim Chong-gu and his crew of 21 cooks to see what it takes to make dakbokkeumtang in such big batches. Cooking this dish begins at 9 a.m. on Saturday. Workers coat the tops of 20-kilogram iron woks with soybean oil and add handfuls of dried oak into the base of the grills.
저희가 주말에 사용하는 장작의 양은 1.5톤 트럭 2대 이상 사용하고 있습니다. 처음에는 손으로 팼는데 장작을 지금은 기계로 하고 있습니다.
When the grills are ready, workers use propane torches to light the wood on fire. After 5 minutes, the woks reach their optimal temperature and an entire bucket of the dakbokkeumtang mixture is poured inside.
사실 저희 가게 닭볶음탕의 가장 어려운 부분은 불 조절이죠. 예. 가스불이 아니고 장작으로 하다 보니까 이제 불 조절 너무 세면 이제 불을 살짝 빼기도 하고 이제 장작이 다 타면 이제 좀 이렇게 봐가지고 장작을 넣어서 일정하게 불 유지를 하는 것이 좀 어렵기는 하죠. 장작으로 하다 보니까.
While maintaining the wood fire is challenging, it's worth the flavorful payoff.
참나무를 사용하는 이유는 참나무가 화력이 제일 좋고요. 두 번째는 훈제 향이 참나무가 가장 뛰어납니다.
Oak wood has a smokier flavour than apple and cherry wood, but a lighter taste compared to hickory and mesquite woods. It also burns at a high temperature, without emitting too much smoke. Even though this dish is cooked on high heat, it still takes a while to cook.
이제 소종탁을 사용하다 보니까 좀 조리 시간이 길거든요. 한 40분 정도. 그래서 저렇게 처음에 한 통을 이렇게 붓고 이게 40분 정도 조리를 하면 이제 이렇게 쫄아들어요. 이제 졸여지면 이제 그때 이제 대파, 양파, 야채 넣어서 이제 손님한테 나가거든요.
Thinly cut onions are added into the wok and cooked for a minute. At 11 a.m, the first batch of Dakbokkeumtang is ready to be served. Workers wheel the woks out to the customers' tables and scoop the stew into metal bowls. And a single order costs around $55.
닭볶음탕 저는 다리살을 좋아하고요. 그 다음에 들어간 야채들도 고구마라든가 당근이라든가 양파라든가 되게 아삭하게 맛있어서 좋았어요.
제가 어렸을 때부터 다른 고기보다 닭고기를 좋아했는데 그렇게 되다 보니까 자연스럽게 닭볶음탕을 좋아하게 됐어요.
감자, 고구마, 야채류를 많이 좋아하고 고기는 뭐 닭가슴살 부위를 좋아하죠.
Samgori Farms opened 3 years ago, and since then, business has centered around one dish. Preparing for a weekend of cooking starts early in the morning, cutting vegetables and chicken in the kitchen.
저희는 당일날 이제 재료 준비를 하고 있고요. 근데 뭐 그중에 가장 큰 이유라고 말씀드리자면 신선한 재료를 사용하고 싶은 욕심에 이제 당일날 준비하고 있고요.
The restaurant uses around 600 sweet potatoes, and carrots every weekend, along with 1,000 green onions.
쓸게요. 고구마는 닭하고 같이 이제 처음 조리할 때 들어가거든요. 그래서 좀 크게 썰고 있어요. 너무 작게 썰면 이제 다 익어서 없어지거든요. 그래서 당근도 처음부터 들어가는 거여서 좀 크게 쓸게요. 닭이랑 같이.
But the most important part of the dish is the locally sourced chicken.
닭볶음탕 가게다 보니까 이제 주 재료인 닭은 한 200마리 정도. 저희는 토종닭을 사용하고요. 토종닭은 일반 닭보다 조금 질겨요.
Once the chicken and vegetables have been chopped and added into the buckets, it's time for the most important part of the dish, the secret seasoning.
양념에는 기본적으로 고춧가루, 고추장, 와인, 아까 레드 와인도 들어가는 뭐 이것저것 이제 들어가고 있습니다. 네, 저희 가게만의 비법이다 보니까 다 말씀드릴 수는 없고요. 양념장 넣을게요.
The bright red gochugaru and gochujang paste help create the dish's signature color and spicy red pepper flavor, while the red wine helps get rid of the meaty smell.
이제 물을 담을 거거든요. 물을 담아서 밖에 이제 소뚜껑, 아까 보셨던 큰 소뚜껑에다가 이제 저희가 육수도 하고 뭐 이것저것 해봤는데 사실 깔끔하게 그냥 저희는 물을 사용하고 있어요. 처음부터 오픈하고 처음부터 장사가 좀 잘 돼가지고 그때부터 이렇게 좀 대량으로 시작하게 됐습니다.
Dakbokkeumtang has been a staple of Korean cooking since the 20th century, following the mass production of poultry in the country. And while chicken might be a fairly new ingredient, the famous red chili gochujang has been grown and eaten in Korea for over 1,000 years. The stew used to be called dakdoritang, containing the Japanese word for chicken dori. The National Institute of Korean Language decided to change it to Dakbokkeumtang, literally translating to stir-fried chicken soup. Today, it's typically served with white kimchi, cucumber pickles, and chive pancakes. And in some cases, there is a bonus at the end. At Samgori Farms, when most of the dish has been served, the remaining sauce is pushed back into the center of the wok. Ramen noodles are added in and enjoyed, so nothing goes to waste.
저희 가게 닭볶음탕의 맛의 비결은 특허받은 양념 소스에 있다고 생각합니다. 특별한 건 없고요. 네. 손님분들이